Terry's scales shimmered with anxiety as the airlock hissed open. After 3 years of diplomatic preparation, she was the first Na'vi biologist to step foot in a human research facility. The gravity felt strange, slightly stronger than Navoria's gentle pull. And the air carried unfamiliar scents that her translator couldn't identify. "Welcome to Sewell Advanced Sciences Institute," said Director Han, bowing slightly. "Your quarters are prepared, and Dr. Kim is eager to begin your collaboration." Terry mimicked the bow, her 4 slender fingers pressed together in the gesture of respect her cultural briefing had described. "Thank you for hosting me. I hope our work benefits both worlds." The human smiled, showing teeth, a gesture Nevis found disconcerting, but which she knew meant friendliness. The translator at her throat converted her harmonic speech to human language, though sometimes nuances were lost. Director Han led her through sterile corridors where humans in white coats stared openly at her blue-green scales and large eyes. Terry had seen humans before in recordings, but being surrounded by them was different. They moved with jerky efficiency, their skin colors ranging from pale to dark brown, nothing like the shifting iridescence of Na'vi scales. They stopped at a laboratory door marked Food Sciences Division. "Dr. Kim awaits you here," Director Han said. "I'll check on you tomorrow." Terry steeled herself before entering. The laboratory looked chaotic to her ordered mind. Workstations clustered with equipment, containers of colored substances, and most shocking of all, open-air experiments. A human male looked up from a microscope and smiled broadly. "Terry, welcome." He approached with extended hand. "I'm Dr. Kim. We've communicated by transmission, but it's wonderful to meet you in person." Terry carefully took his hand, feeling the strange warmth of mammalian skin. "The honor is mine," she said formally. Dr. Kim showed her around the lab, explaining various projects. "We're especially interested in your species' nutritional symbiosis. The way Navis share nutrients could revolutionize our approach to food science." Terry nodded, though privately she wondered how humans had survived so long with their primitive approach to nutrition. Their bodies couldn't synthesize most essential compounds, forcing them to consume other organisms directly. "Would you like to see our cultures?" Dr. Kim asked, leading her to a station where small containers held growing microorganisms. Terry stepped back instinctively. "You keep living organisms." Deliberately. Dr. Kim laughed. "Of course. These are beneficial bacteria for fermentation. They're essential to many of our foods." Terry's scales flushed purple with shock. "You consume bacteria, intentionally?" "Absolutely. Here, let me show you." He opened a refrigeration unit and removed a small container. "This is yogurt, one of our oldest fermented foods." He opened it, and Terry's sensitive olfactory organs detected millions of living organisms. Dr. Kim took a spoon and consumed some right before her eyes. "You're eating them while they're still alive," she whispered, horrified. Dr. Kim looked puzzled. "Yes, they're beneficial for our digestive systems. Don't Navis use microbial helpers? Our nutrition is synthesized in sterile environments," Terry explained, trying to hide her disgust. "We haven't consumed living organisms for 10,000 years." "Fascinating." Dr. Kim's eyes lit up. "That explains your species' approach to nutrient-sharing pools. You've evolved beyond individual consumption." A human assistant entered, carrying more containers. "Dr. Kim, the kimchi samples are ready for testing." Terry watched in mounting horror as they opened jars of vegetables teeming with bacteria. The smell overwhelmed her senses. "Would you like to try some?" Dr. Kim offered innocently. Terry's scales flashed danger red. "No, thank you," she managed politely. Dr. Kim seemed to finally notice her discomfort. "I'm sorry. I should have considered the cultural differences. Perhaps we should start with something less active." "That would be appreciated," Terry said, her colors slowly returning to normal. "Let me show you your workstation." We tried to set it up according to Na'vi specifications. The separate area was indeed more orderly, with clean surfaces and proper containment fields. Terry felt her anxiety lessen slightly. Tomorrow we'll begin mapping the biochemical parallels between our species, Dr. Kim said. Despite our differences, I believe we have much to learn from each other. As Terry arranged her instruments, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake coming here. These humans were indeed savages with their bacterial feasts and casual approach to microbiology. Yet Dr. Kim's enthusiasm was genuine, and his scientific curiosity matched her own. Perhaps there was wisdom in these strange beings after all. She would observe, learn, and try not to judge, even when they consumed living organisms right before her eyes. 2 weeks had passed since Terry's arrival on Earth. She had grown somewhat used to the humans' strange habits, though she still flinched whenever Dr. Kim handled bacterial cultures without protective gear. Her work area remained meticulously clean, a stark contrast to the organized chaos of the human scientists' stations. "Your analysis of our probiotic strains is remarkable," Dr. Kim told her one morning, reviewing her data. "You've identified patterns we never noticed." Terry's scales rippled with modest blue. "It's merely a different perspective. Navi vision can distinguish bacterial morphologies your instruments might miss." Dr. Kim nodded excitedly. "This collaboration is exceeding all expectations. The director wants us to present our findings at next week's conference." Terry felt both pride and anxiety at this news. Public speaking among humans still made her nervous, but she was beginning to enjoy working with Dr. Kim. Despite his barbaric eating habits, his scientific mind was brilliant. "Today we're testing something special," Dr. Kim announced, leading her to a new station. "We've been cultivating a hybrid culture using elements from both Earth bacteria and Navi nutritional compounds." He gestured to a large pot gently warming on a heating element. Inside was a thick, creamy substance that reminded Terry of the nutrient pools on Navoria, except this one contained millions of active microorganisms. "What is its purpose?" she asked, maintaining a safe distance. "If successful, it could be a revolutionary food source," Dr. Kim explained. "It combines the probiotic benefits of our fermentation with the complete nutritional profile of your species' synthesized foods." Despite her lingering discomfort, Terry was impressed by the concept, an interesting application of cross-species science. "I've invited several colleagues to witness our first test," Dr. Kim added, checking the temperature. "This could change how humans approach nutrition." Soon, 5 other scientists filed into the laboratory. Terry recognized Dr. Park from medical sciences and Dr. Lee from biochemistry, but the others were new faces. All watched with interest as Dr. Kim stirred the mixture. "The enzymatic activity has stabilized," he announced, checking his readings. "It's ready for testing." To Terry's surprise, he set out a plate of small bread pieces beside the pot. Her translator must have malfunctioned, because surely he wasn't planning what it appeared he was planning. "The enzymes work best when the mixture is consumed with a simple carbohydrate carrier," Dr. Kim explained to the group. He picked up a piece of bread and dipped it directly into the communal pot. Terry's scales flashed alarm red. On Navoria, nutrient pools were deeply personal, shared only between family members or intimate partners. The biochemical exchange was considered sacred. Before she could stop herself, her translator broadcast her shock. "You're really going to dip T8 into me?" The room fell silent. Humans turned to stare at her flashing scales. "I mean," Terry struggled to explain, her harmonics pitching higher with embarrassment. "That mixture contains Navi nutritional compounds. In our culture, shared nutrient sources are intimate biological exchanges." Dr. Kim's eyes widened with sudden understanding. He carefully set down the bread, "Like our concept of bodily fluids." "Yes," Terry said, her scales now pulsing mortified purple. "When you dip that bread and were about to pass it around, it would be like asking everyone to. Oh." Dr. Kim looked genuinely horrified. "Terry, I had no idea. Our cultural briefing mentioned nothing about nutrient sharing protocols." The other scientists looked equally embarrassed. Dr. Park cleared her throat. Perhaps we should use individual sample containers. Of course, Dr. Kim agreed quickly. Terry, I apologize for the misunderstanding. Terry's scales gradually returned to their normal blue-green. No apology needed. Cultural differences are why I'm here, to learn and share. As Dr. Kim busied himself preparing separate containers, Terry observed the humans' reaction with interest. Despite their seemingly savage approach to bacteria and food, they respected her cultural boundaries immediately once they understood. Later, after the other scientists had left with their individual samples, Dr. Kim approached her workstation. I'm truly sorry about the misunderstanding, he said quietly. It's forgotten, Terry assured him. Though I admit, watching humans eat continues to fascinate and terrify me. You really are remarkable creatures. Dr. Kim laughed. As are Navis. Your people developed nutrient sharing as a form of bonding, while we developed communal meals. Different paths to the same goal, connection. Terry considered this. Perhaps we're not so different after all. Though next time I develop a hybrid food, Dr. Kim added with a smile, I promise not to ask anyone to dip anything into you. Terry's scales flickered with amusement as her translator struggled to convey her harmonic laughter. The morning after the lab incident, Terry arrived to find Dr. Kim rearranging the laboratory. He had set up a clear barrier dividing the room. On one side, everything was organized with strict Navi precision. On the other, the familiar controlled chaos of human science continued. I thought we could learn better if we both had our preferred environments, Dr. Kim explained, but with a transparent barrier so we can observe each other's methods. Terry's scales shifted to please turquoise. That's thoughtful of you. I also researched Navy nutritional customs last night, Dr. Kim added. I had no idea shared nutrient pools were so significant in your culture. They're central to our social structure, Terry explained, setting up her equipment. When Navis share a nutrient pool, we exchange biochemical markers. It creates bonds between individuals. Like our sharing of meals, Dr. Kim suggested, though much more direct. Yes, but more intimate. The closest human equivalent might be. Terry paused, searching for the right comparison. Blood transfusion, perhaps, but voluntary and pleasurable. Dr. Kim's eyebrows rose. And I was casually dipping bread into it. No wonder you were shocked. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Park arriving with several containers. I brought breakfast, she announced. And I'm curious to learn more about Navi eating habits. Instead of one communal dish, she had brought individual portions for everyone. Terry appreciated the consideration. Actually, Terry said, surprising herself with her boldness, I've prepared something too. She removed a small container from her personal storage. Inside was a clear blue gel. This is a basic Navy nutrient compound. It's completely sterile and designed for human consumption. Dr. Kim and Dr. Park looked at the gel with interest. Is it safe for us? Dr. Park asked. Yes, I worked with your medical team to ensure compatibility. It contains no harmful compounds for humans, though it might taste bland to you. Dr. Kim was the first to try it, taking a small amount on a spoon. His eyes widened as he tasted it. It's not bland at all. It's changing flavors as I eat it. The compounds react to different areas of your tongue, Terry explained. They adapt to the taster's preferences. Dr. Park tried some and nodded appreciatively. Amazing. It's like it knows exactly what I'm craving. Terry felt her scales flush with pride. That's just a simple compound. On Navoria, our nutrition scientists create much more complex experiences. Over the next few days, the cultural exchange deepened. Terry allowed herself to observe human eating habits more openly, asking questions that would have embarrassed her earlier. Why do humans gather to eat together if you don't share biochemical markers? She asked during a lunch break. Connection doesn't always have to be biological, Dr. Kim explained. Sharing food creates social bonds. We talk, laugh, and build relationships while satisfying a basic need. Terry considered this. efficient. Two purposes served simultaneously. 1 week later, Dr. Kim approached Terry with excitement. "I've been analyzing the Navi nutrient compounds you shared, and I have a theory." He showed her a series of molecular models on his screen. "The compounds in your nutrient gel adapt not just to taste preferences, but to nutritional needs. They could potentially help humans with absorption disorders." Terry moved closer to the screen, her scientific curiosity overriding her usual caution about personal space. "You're right. The molecular structure allows for customized nutrient delivery." Their research focus shifted. Every day, they tested new combinations of Navi compounds and human digestive enzymes. Terry found herself enjoying the collaborative process, even when it meant handling bacterial cultures. During one experiment, Dr. Kim noticed Terry working without her usual protective gloves. "You're touching the bacteria directly," he observed. Terry looked down at her scaled hands. Yes, I've been studying your research on beneficial bacteria. My species might have been too quick to eliminate all microorganisms from our diet." Dr. Kim smiled. "And I've been incorporating sterilization techniques from your methods. Perhaps we both had something to learn." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While examining a culture under a microscope, Terry noticed something unusual. The human probiotic bacteria are forming patterns similar to Navi nutritional structures, she said, stepping back so Dr. Kim could see. He studied the sample, then looked at her with excitement. "They're adapting to the Navi compounds, creating a hybrid structure that could work for both our species. A biological bridge between our worlds," Terry said softly. That evening, they celebrated with a meal that honored both traditions: individual portions of human food alongside samples of Navi nutritional compounds, each learning from the other's culture without compromising their own. The alarm blared through the laboratory with a piercing wail. Terry's scales flashed anxious yellow as she looked up from her workstation. Dr. Kim rushed to the communication panel on the wall. "This is Dr. Kim. What's happening?" he asked, his voice tense. The screen flickered to life, showing Director Han's worried face. "We have a situation. 3 human researchers and 2 Navi delegates have fallen ill with similar symptoms. Medical can't identify the pathogen." Terry moved closer to the screen. "What symptoms are they showing?" "Humans have fever, respiratory distress, and unusual skin discoloration. Navis are experiencing scale rigidity and harmonic disruption. Both groups show signs of internal organ inflammation. It's spreading rapidly through the research center." Dr. Kim and Terry exchanged worried glances. For something to affect both species was unprecedented. Their biologies were fundamentally different. "We need to see the patients," Dr. Kim said. "Quarantine protocols are in effect," Director Han replied. "But we need your expertise. Your work with cross-species nutrition might help us understand what's happening." Within minutes, they were rushing through nearly empty corridors wearing protective suits. The research center had transformed from a bustling hub of activity to an eerily quiet facility. The medical wing was chaos. Human doctors worked alongside the single Navi healer who had been part of the delegation. In separate isolation rooms, the infected humans and Navis lay suffering. Dr. Park met them at the entrance, her face haggard behind her mask. "It's spreading through both air and contact. Standard treatments are ineffective." "Have you compared blood samples?" Terry asked. "Yes. The pathogen appears to be some kind of hybrid microorganism. It has elements we recognize from both Earth and Navi biology, but combined in ways we've never seen." A terrible realization dawned on Terry. Our research, could this be connected to our experiments with hybrid nutrition? Dr. Kim's face paled. "It's possible. We've been creating cross-species compounds for weeks." They hurried to a laboratory that had been converted for emergency research. Samples from infected individuals were being analyzed by automated systems. "We need to see the molecular structure," Terry said, approaching a microscope. What she saw made her scales darken with dread. "This is definitely related to our work. Look at the protein coat. It has markers from our nutrient compounds." Dr. Kim examined the sample, combined with elements from our probiotic cultures. But how did it mutate to become pathogenic? They worked frantically, tracing back through their experiments. Hours passed as more cases were reported. The pathogen was spreading beyond the research center into the surrounding community. "I've found something," Terry announced, her voice tight with urgency. "One of our early experiments. Remember batch J7? We discarded it because the bacteria seemed dormant." They weren't dormant, Dr. Kim realized. They were adapting, evolving. And now they're using the adaptive properties of Navi nutrients to target both our species, Terry concluded. More hours passed in desperate work. The infected count rose to 30, then 50. Both humans and Navis were falling ill at an alarming rate. "Traditional antibiotics won't work," Dr. Park said, joining them after checking on patients. "And Navi immunity boosters are equally ineffective." Terry stared at the sample cultures, her scientific mind racing. What if we use what we've learned about each other? Not human methods or Navi methods, but something new. Dr. Kim looked up from his data, eyes widening with understanding. A hybrid approach for a hybrid pathogen. They began working on a new theory. If the pathogen was using Navi adaptive properties combined with human bacterial resilience, perhaps they could create a treatment that turned those strengths into weaknesses. "The pathogen adapts to its host," Terry explained as they mixed compounds. "But what if we introduce a compound that makes it adapt in a way that renders it harmless?" They created a treatment using modified human probiotics that had been exposed to Navi biochemicals. The bacteria were programmed to seek out the pathogen and trigger its adaptive response, but in a direction that would neutralize it rather than strengthen it. Testing showed promise, but they needed to move quickly. "We need to test it on an infected subject," Dr. Kim said hesitantly. Terry's scales shifted to determined blue. "I'll do it." "What?" "No," Dr. Kim protested. "The treatment is based more on Navi biology than human. If something goes wrong, I have a better chance of surviving." Terry insisted. "And we're running out of time." Before anyone could stop her, Terry entered an isolation room with an infected Navi. She administered the treatment, then took a sample of the pathogen herself. For tense hours, they monitored her condition. When her scales began to brighten from sickly gray to healthy blue-green, they knew they had their answer. "It's working," Dr. Kim whispered, relief washing over his face. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Sewell Advanced Sciences Institute courtyard as Terry watched the humans and Navis mingling together. 3 months had passed since the pathogen crisis. What had started as a medical emergency had transformed into something unexpected, a deeper connection between their species. Terry's gaze found Dr. Kim across the gathering. He was explaining something to a group of Navi scientists, his hands moving animatedly. The Navis listened with their scales, shifting through interested blues and purples. 6 more Navi scientists had arrived after the crisis, eager to build on what Terry and Dr. Kim had discovered. "It's time for your speech," said Dr. Park, approaching with 2 glasses. One contained a human beverage, the other the shimmering blue nutrient compound that Navis preferred. Terry accepted her glass with a gesture of gratitude. "I'm not sure what to say. When I first arrived, I never imagined this outcome." "Just speak honestly," Dr. Park suggested. "That's what brought us here." Director Hand called for attention, and the gathered scientists quieted. "Today we celebrate not just the successful containment of the cross-species pathogen, but also the remarkable partnership that made it possible. Terry, would you share your thoughts?" Terry moved to the center of the courtyard, her scales shifting to calm blue despite her nervousness. All eyes were on her, human and Navi alike. "When I first arrived on Earth," she began, her translator converting her harmonics to human speech, "I was horrified by human habits. You ate living bacteria willingly. You shared food communally without biological safeguards. I thought you were primitive." The humans chuckled, comfortable now with Navi directness. I call humans savage beasts in my private reports, Terry admitted. Now I understand that what I saw as savage was simply different evolutionary wisdom. She gestured to Dr. Kim. Our differences became our strength. The hybrid pathogen could not have been defeated by either species alone. It required both perspectives. Dr. Kim nodded in acknowledgement, his eyes reflecting the respect that had grown between them. The treatment we developed has applications beyond the pathogen, Terry continued. Already it has helped 23 humans with severe digestive disorders. On Navoria, our scientists are using human probiotic research to reintroduce beneficial bacteria to our two sterile environments. The gathering applauded. Director Hand stepped forward with a small box. In recognition of your contributions, the Earth Science Council presents you with this token of our appreciation. Inside the box was a pendant, a simple design showing the DNA double helix intertwined with the spiral pattern unique to Navi genetic material. Thank you, Terry said, genuinely moved. But the real gift has been understanding. After the ceremony, Terry found Dr. Kim standing alone by the laboratory entrance. I leave for Navoria tomorrow, she said. I know. He smiled, though his eyes showed sadness. Will you continue our research there? Yes, and I hope you'll visit. Our Science Council has approved an exchange program for human scientists. Dr. Kim brightened. I'd like that. There's still so much we can learn from each other. Terry hesitated, then reached into her personal carrier. She removed a small container of shimmering blue gel, different from the standard nutrient compound. This is for you, she said. On Navoria, we share this only with those we consider family. Dr. Kim looked surprised. Terry, I understand what this means in your culture. Are you sure? Not all biological connections require the same biology, she replied, echoing words he had once spoken to her. This compound contains my personal biochemical signature. It will adapt to your physiology, providing nutrients your body specifically needs. When you consume it, there will be a connection between us, even across space. Dr. Kim carefully accepted the container. I'm honored. I have something for you too. He handed her a small plant in a clear container. This is a culture of the beneficial bacteria we developed together, he explained. It's been modified to thrive in Navi environments. A little bit of Earth's savagery to take with you. Terry's scales rippled with amused turquoise. How fitting. The next morning, as Terry boarded the ship that would take her home, she carried with her more than research data and bacterial cultures. She carried a new understanding that differences were not flaws but adaptations, that what seemed primitive could be ingenious from another perspective. As the ship rose through Earth's atmosphere, she touched the DNA pendant at her neck. The humans, with their messy eating habits and their casual approach to bacteria, had changed her forever. And perhaps in some small way, she had changed them too. On her datapad, a message appeared from Dr. Kim. Safe journey. Remember, savage beasts make the best friends. Terry's scales shimmered with laughter as the blue curve of Earth receded behind her.